Welcome to our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Genesis. Today we are turning to Genesis chapter 3, the story of the fall. Our last several sessions together we've been looking at the accounts of creation in chapters 1 and 2. And we've seen, of course, that all that is God made. His creation was good. Oh, it was very good. It was perfect. And into the midst of this paradise that he had created, he placed Adam and Eve, humanity, as the apex of his creation, the stewards of all that he had made, this world he had made for us. Now, you might wonder, if God made the world so good and so perfect, then why is it in such a mess today? Why is the world so messed up? It's because of the fall. The answer to that is in chapter 3. Because Adam and Eve, humanity, were meant to be the stewards and are the stewards of God's creation. When we fell into sin and rebellion against God, that only marred us, but it marred all of creation. It made a defect in all of creation. And so the story of how the world got in the mess it's in is in chapter 3, the story of the fall. But also we're going to see that in the story of the fall is not only how sin began in our world and ruined everything, but also how God began a process of redemption, a story of reclamation, of restoration. For you see, salvation is all about God restoring us and his creation to what it was meant to be. But it all begins, of course, with the story of the fall in chapter 3. So let's begin to look at that. Now, as we start reading in chapter 3, we hear these words. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. And the serpent said to the woman. Now first we ask, who is this serpent? In the story itself, he is not immediately identified. We only realize that he is an antagonist and an enemy and comes to try to tempt and seduce Adam and Eve into sin. We know, of course, that he is the devil or Satan. He's not definitely identified as such in chapter 3, but his character is revealed and shows us who he is. Of course, later in the Bible, it makes it quite clear. In the book of Revelation, when talking about Satan, the book says he is that ancient serpent, referring back to chapter 3 of the book of Genesis. So we see the devil introduced here for the first time as the agent of temptation, trying to seduce men and women away from God's plan for them and into a life of rebellion. So the serpent says to the woman, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? The woman said, we may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but the Lord God did say, you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you'll die. You will not certainly die, the serpent said to the woman. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened. You will be like God. You will know good and evil. Now we see that the temptation is to entice the woman, and after her the man, to take from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the one prohibition, the one tree they were not to partake of. Now notice though how Satan poses the question. He immediately begins to plant seeds of doubt about the truthfulness of God. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? No, God had not said that. They were free to eat from all the trees in the garden, save the one. But he places that doubt. Maybe God is not so good after all, that he's denying you something that might be enjoyable. The woman says, Eve says, well, we can eat from all the trees except the one. God said we can't have from that one. We can't even touch that one. Actually, God had not said that. He said you must not eat from it. But Eve added to the prohibition. And now Satan deliberately accused God of being a liar. Oh, you will not die. You'll become like God. You'll become like God yourself. You'll know good and evil. You'll be able to decide for yourself what is right and wrong. You'll be able to set the standards for yourself between good and evil. Take of the fruit and become like God. Now you see what the heart of temptation is? The heart of temptation is to say to God, I don't want you to be God. I want to be God. I want to take your place. All sin is in one sense an attempt to make myself the God of my own life and refuse the Lord's place over me. He only meant it for me, for good for me. Created a perfect world. And the one prohibition was that I might live in fullness within this world he made. But the sin, the temptation is always to usurp the place of God. I will be God, not you. And so Satan plants that seed of doubt in Eve's mind and says, this fruit is good and it'll make you like God. You won't have to obey God anymore. You can be God of your own life. You know, the fullness of our life is always found in obedience to God. He made us, and when we live in obedience to Him, our lives are full and complete. Sin comes in when I want to dethrone God, as it were, and take the throne myself. When I want to say, I would rather be God than you. That is the heart of sin, and that is the temptation. So here in the story of the fall, we see Satan tempting Eve. Doubt God. He hasn't really been truthful with you. You can be like God yourself if you'll just take from the fruit. And of course, Eve's about to do that. Now, our next session, we'll look a little more detail at how Eve took the fruit and gave it to Adam and all that transpires from it. But just keep in mind, always remember that the temptation always comes at the place to say, I want to be master of my own life. I don't want God anymore. And that leads to destruction. That leads to death, as God had warned us. But we'll look at that in some more detail tomorrow. Hope you have a great day today. I hope you know the blessing of God upon your life, and I hope you'll live in absolute obedience to His will for your life, for that is the way of fullness and of joy. I'll see you next time in our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Genesis.